What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Today's question of the day is, do you work on your thoracic spine mobility or your upper back mobility? If you're on YouTube, drop a comment down below in the thread. What is going on, world? Welcome to the Plants and PRs podcast. The podcast to help you move better, feel better, and in the long run, look a hell of a lot better. My name is Tyler Egan. I am a certified personal trainer, not a doctor. And I want to emphasize that today, because today we're going to be talking about the thoracic spine a little bit and why it's so damn important. It's probably one of the biggest issues I see in movement across the land, or at least from what I've seen, from what I've gathered. I don't know. Actually, maybe your hips are worse. Thoracic spine, there's a lot. There's actually a lot of mobility issues across the world that can wait. There's actually a lot of mobility issues when it comes to everyday people. Thoracic spine mobility is one that a lot of people lack. Mobility in your hips is another huge one. Ankles. Yeah, I don't know. I would probably say hips or your thoracic spine or your upper back. I'll probably refer to it as both your upper back or your thoracic spine throughout the podcast. This is going to be a two-part episode. I'll do one episode today, one episode tomorrow, just because I want to discuss a couple different things. The first part episode will be me discussing the thoracic spine, a little bit about what it does, some things that movements and mobility drills that I've implemented that have helped me. I've actually done a couple of YouTube videos on shoulders and thoracic spine mobility, or your upper back mobility always plays a role when it comes to shoulder exercises. Actually, it plays a role in a lot of exercises, which leads me to the second part. The second part of this of the thoracic spine episode is going to be more about how the thoracic spine can help in other exercises, things like the overhead press, squat, all variations, front, back, overhead, goblet squat, benching, deadlifts, lat pull downs. I'm going to talk about all those things and how it can really help you. So let's get into it, shall we? The thoracic spine or the upper back. The thoracic spine is made up of the upper back muscles and the abs. It's considered the thoracic cavity, which holds vital organs like your heart and your lungs. Now, if you've been listening to the show for some time now, wow, we're going on 6 months of me having the podcast. That's pretty cool. 6 months. I have over 1,000 downloads. I think what do you call it? Announced that a few weeks ago. That and a couple of my shows had a decent amount of downloads, like over 30 downloads on a couple episodes, which is really, really cool. Really happy about that. So thank you guys. But referencing a episode I did a couple months back was all about sitting and how detrimental it can be for our health. What people don't realize is, and I feel like I say that like every episode, now that I just said it out loud again, I'm recording a second episode today. I'm going to be taking a trip down to North Carolina come Thursday. It's Tuesday right now as I record this. So I want to get ahead on some podcast episodes. But now that I'm doing a second episode throughout the day, I realize that I say that a lot. What people don't realize, but a lot of us don't. I don't either a lot of the time. I have to correct myself. What a lot of people don't realize is how detrimental sitting can be to us. We sit at these desks or tables or whatever you're sitting at, or whatever you're doing all day, every day for work. We're in these positions for 6, 7, 8 hours at a time, and our body will adapt to those positions, especially if we don't hold ourselves upright. I've also done episodes all about posture and stuff like that. So if you are looking for those, I'll leave a link in the show notes for that. So our body will adapt to these positions, and we don't undo them, and then we go work out. So we're doing deadlifts with our shoulders rounded forward and our butt turned off, our glute muscles turned off. We're doing squats, same thing, shoulders rounded forward, glutes turned off, and our lower back is just taking a beating. It's just getting fucking manhandled day in and day out, because we don't have proper mobility. We don't hold ourselves upright. We don't correct it before we go into the gym, and then it just leads to a lot of disastrous things. So the thoracic spine is one of those things you want to mobilize. You want to make sure you have mobility in this particular joint, because it is responsible for rotational movement. It allows us a lot of rotational freedom. That's why we have 360 degrees of plane of motion to work from, to exercise in. It can affect muscles like rounding your shoulders and stuff like that. So it's really, really important. There's 12 vertebrae that make up your thoracic spine, that part of your spine. 24 bones, which house the spinal cord itself. Two major muscles, which are muscles that separate out from the erector spinae. The erector spinae are just the muscles that run up the spinal cord on your back. They're you ever done back extensions and you see like what muscles you're working? They usually put the erector spinae on that kind of machine. Those are the muscles you're working in this particular instance. So these muscles need to be strong. They need to be mobile because, like I said, it gives us this rotational freedom to move. Other animals don't have that. We do. So we need to utilize it. We need to mobilize it. Some of my favorite exercises for thoracic spine mobility are open books. That's a really, really good exercise. You can do some foam rolling where you just lay on a foam roller, put your arms overhead to really initiate that movement. That's where thoracic spine mobility can come in tremendously, is overhead. We don't have thoracic spine mobility, we don't have the ability to extend through our through the upper part of our spine. We tend to round our shoulders forward, hunch our head forward, and that can lead to a lot of overhead mobility issues, which, if you train frequently, you understand overhead pressing, any kind, even if it's like an incline bench press, a higher incline, lat pull downs, some other row variations, pull-ups, chin-ups. These kind of movements, you need to have adequate mobility to get your arms above your head. That's where your thoracic spine comes into play. If you cannot extend through your thoracic spine, you're going to really struggle to get your arms overhead, which is going to put your shoulders in a very vulnerable position. Your lower back is going to take a beating. Like I said, if you're sitting down all day, your shoulders rounded forward, thoracic spine caved in, you are going to limit your overhead mobility and put your shoulders in that vulnerable position, and your lower back is just going to be taking more of the brunt of it because your upper back cannot, due to the lack of thoracic spine mobility or upper back mobility. I hope that makes sense to you guys. Now, the best way the best way I've heard on how to think about extending through your thoracic spine is think about being pulled up from your head. So for me, I'm thinking about being pulled up from my actual hair. And what that does is it pulls your chest up. Now, when you do that, when you try to correct yourself and correct your thoracic spine, you want to make sure, because what we tend to do because of shortened muscles, weak muscles in our glutes, we tend to round our lower back to get our shoulders up and our chest open. You don't want to do that. All you want to do is pull yourself up. So really open up your chest, really open up the upper back, but keep your pelvis neutral. Don't round at your lower back to get yourself there. Don't poke your butt back, because that's what it looks like. You poke your butt back to get your shoulders rounded backwards where they're supposed to be, and then you have this arch in your lower back. That's not adequate thoracic spine mobility. So if you're trying to get your shoulders back right now, look at yourself in the mirror sideways. If in order to get your shoulders back into that position where your chest is up and open, you also need to pull your head back. But is your lower back rounding? Look at that. The second you go to pull your shoulders back, check your pelvis. If your pelvis is rotating back with you, if your butt is poking back, your lower back is rounding, then you do not have adequate thoracic spine mobility to get your chest, your shoulders, your upper back in a good position to press overhead or do lat pull downs. Or honestly, in my opinion, to perform the majority of exercises. Because how you carry yourself out of the gym, how you walk around, how you pick things up off the ground outside of the gym is how it's going to transfer over inside of the gym. If you're going to bend over to pick something up, hinge at your hips, squat down, pick that thing up with good thoracic spine mobility, really good lat engagement to really stabilize your shoulders. These things matter. They matter. Thoracic spine mobility is like I said in the very beginning of the episode, is probably one of the biggest issues I see everyday people walking around with. Everybody's shoulders are caved forward, okay, and it's just going to lead to injury. This is how. And look, again, I said this in the beginning as well. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physical therapist. I just have a lot of passion behind this side of human movement and exercise. But this is just the way I see it. your thoracic spine being rounded the way it does, the way we walk around a lot of the time, leads to things like rotator cuff tears. What's the one? A torn pec. That's something I hear about a lot in gyms. Because if you think about it, if you're going down to do a bench press and your shoulders are rounded forward and you go to lower that bar down, your shoulder is now in an internally rotated position, meaning your shoulder is in the front of its socket and your elbows are almost facing up as you try to lower that weight down. That is putting a tremendous amount of torque on the front part of your shoulder and your pec, which is the main reason why I brought this up. And you don't have adequate mobility to get your thoracic spine open to even stretch your chest in the first place, hence why the pec muscle will just tear, because it doesn't have that range of motion, it doesn't have the flexibility. The upper back doesn't have the mobility to put yourself in that position in the first place, and we're forcing it. It can also lead to rotator cuff tear. Man, that's another one I can't say. What was it last week? Proper posture. Today it's rotator cuff tears. Okay, rotator cuff tears. So what leads to that, and again, my opinion, not a doctor, not a physical therapist, is because our rotator cuff muscles, which sit on the backside of our shoulder, on our scapula, are on a stretch. And then we try to do things that we probably can't do because we lack the mobility in our upper back. We lack the strength in our rotator cuff. And then, poof, there goes a tear. It leads to a lot of injuries. We need to have access to these ranges of motion. Our spine isn't capable of this for no reason. There's a reason behind it. So unlock this, open up your thoracic spine. It's going to lead to a lot of gains in the gym. I'm telling you right now, if you focus on thoracic spine mobility, I have no doubt in my mind you will start to see improvements in just your overall movement in everyday life, but you will see improvements in the gym because you need adequate thoracic spine mobility in order to get in a good position for bench, for incline benching, for lat pull downs, for squatting, and overhead pressing, and even deadlifting. And that's what tomorrow's episode is going to be more about, how thoracic spine mobility can play a role in these kinds of exercises. So if you guys took something from this, if you learned a little something, please leave a rate and review on iTunes. If you're on YouTube, drop a comment down below on things you want to learn more about, maybe things that weren't clear enough, because there's one thing I actually don't talk about enough in this show. And maybe that's a bit more my purpose behind why I do this. One thing I've realized over the last year and a half, 2 years, that I've been learning more about the human body and how we're supposed to optimally move is that it's not something that's talked about a lot. Like, even when it comes to physical therapists and chiropractors and people who just understand this already, I just don't see a lot of it out on the internet, in schools. I didn't learn anything about this stuff. So I really want to talk about it more. And even if that means that I have to be wrong and someone corrects me, I'm okay with that, because I only know so much as a personal trainer. So yeah, I'm going to wrap the show up there today, guys. I hope you took something from this. If you did, please leave a rate and review, subscribe, YouTube, same thing, drop a comment down below, and I will check you guys out in the next episode. Oh, stay tuned for part 2 tomorrow. Peace. Thank you for watching the entire video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, and stay tuned for more, because I'm going to start uploading more podcast episodes here. And yeah.